And so I think the power that comes from anyone who's willing to choose the path of serving is this sense that everyone rises to the top and you can never lose. The thing is when you serve, you never lose.
So, Mitch, I wanted to bring you back to a previous conversation that we had because there was more to be covered there. We were talking about professions that require trust.
Sure.
Particularly in the financial industry, and then we decided every profession, including my dentist, requires that those of us who use those professionals trust them. So I had asked you previously, how do we build trust? How do we create trust? And you came up with a word that I haven't heard frequently, and that is by service.
Right.
You talked about experience and skill and things that we accept as building trust, but then you said a servant's heart, I think is what you were getting at. And I asked you to give me one example. What's that look like? And you provided the first of what I think you have a couple of examples in mind.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think to just go back to that conversation and understand that when we are in the business of helping families secure their financial future, we have to understand that trust is connected to it. People don't make decisions regarding their finances without trust. And so as I begin to think about that, experience, referrals, all these ways that we tend to build credibility and trust work, but they tend to take time. So some of those you just have to resign to the fact that trust is built over time. Well, I don't necessarily like those types of answers where I have to feel like I surrender my control to something that I can't control. Well, I start thinking about, the people who I trust the most have a trait, a servant's heart. They serve the most. And I thought, well, if service is connected to trust, well, I can take control of that, right? I can make a decision to step in to serve and maybe accelerate the timeline of building trust. Now, I still recognize trust is something that is built over time. But if I can serve someone and act into that,
that's your choice.
Then maybe I can speed that process up and establish trust or build trust sooner.
And I asked you previously, give me an example of how we do that. And you said, make it personal, make the service personal in order to make it more genuine and authentic and to engender trust. Give me one more example of how we do this.
Right. So another way that we can do this, to build trust through serving is to get low. Now, to get low requires a level of security that I have in my own personal identity and my own vocation. So there's some internal work that I have to do to be secure. It also carries a sense of conviction with it. And that's because I don't know that everyone takes the path of serving towards success. There's a lot of paths people might take to get to the top. But I've determined as a personal conviction in my life that the only way I want to succeed is by serving and getting to the point where everyone can win with me. And in fact, I think people who tend to serve carry this conviction that we don't win unless everyone wins. So then my job as a professional, whether I'm a financial wholesaler or an advisor, I'm stepping into any space to work with someone in the financial industry, is to try and get the lowest in the room or be the lowest person in the room.
We do have a tendency, don't we, to rank order people. We walk into a room and we size up who's got the title, who's got the most money, who's got the most prestige, who's the highest leader in the room, and then we act accordingly. I'm interpreting your use of the word low as to fight that tendency.
Yeah, exactly. I think we are all prone to compare in that way from time to time, We walk into a room, we size people up based on how much money they make, what they do for a living, Who do they know? But what if we, for a moment, just resisted that urge to try to establish where we fit in that pecking order and just said, hey, how do I become the lowest person in the room? I think when we do that, we take the posture of a servant, a person who's willing to serve. I think it was Gandhi who coined this phrase, but he says, a rising tide lifts all ships. And there's a sense that when I as a leader am willing to step into that space with an attitude to serve, then it doesn't matter how successful I've been. It doesn't matter what credential I carry, what achievement I've made, how productive I've been. I have no stake in my pedigree, because at the end of the day, success for me is making sure everyone rises to the top. And so I think the power that comes from anyone who's willing to choose the path of serving is this sense that everyone rises to the top and you can never lose. The thing is when you serve, you never lose.
Let's finish here. You once told me about a sign hanging at a youth camp where you were once a leader that fits perfectly into what we've been talking about.
Sure. So this would have been years ago when I was just beginning my career of developing myself as an emerging leader. And so I served at a nonprofit organization. And as a result, I was a volunteer. We stepped in to serve, and everyone there was a volunteer. And as we lived in this community and we served, there was a sense of commitment that we made where everyone was required to do kitchen duties throughout the month. Now, you have to understand that the highest ranking director to the lowest and the newest person coming on staff all had to show up to do these kitchen duties. No one was exempt from it, which I thought really spoke to the point of a sense we're all in here to serve and no one's higher than another. And when you walked into the kitchen to do your kitchen duties, hanging over the door was this sign that said, you don't know if you're a servant until you're treated like one. And I think that's the ultimate test of if we are serving or if we think we're a servant. And that is, what do we do when people treat us like one? It's one thing to serve and then get recognition for it. But what about when we serve that client and they don't thank us? What about when we lay our rights down or we lay our life down in a way that puts another one up and they don't actually acknowledge it? Well, if I'm frustrated or offended by that, then I probably have some heart work that I need to do to align my life back to what it means to serve. Because if I've really made the decision to serve, then I've given that right up before I ever made the gesture in the first place.